Hello, Miami Dolphins fans. How are you today? And thank you for joining me here at the Sleeper Miami Dolphins YouTube channel. I am your host, Mike Oliva. As always, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, smash that like button as well. Also, if you're on Twitter or X, please be sure to be following us at Sleeper Miami. Well, there's a lot to talk about here with Miami Dolphins this week. Since last Friday's preseason loss to the Washington Commanders, it's been a very busy week for the Dolphins. They let go of a couple guys. Mason Rieger's probably the most notable of the releases. Someone who I know a lot of fans had high hopes for, but he got hurt and he's had a lot of injuries in the past, so he's no longer here. Quinn Ewers is out this week with a groin injury. He didn't play well last week. He really hasn't played well in training camp much, so he's not going to be around for Saturday's preseason game. He hasn't practiced all week. Hopefully he'll be back and ready to go next week for the final preseason game when they play Atlanta. But just so much happening. And I want to start with this. There's a report from a Green Bay Packers insider that 3 teams are interested in trading for Packers cornerback Carrington Valentine. The 3 teams are Miami, of course, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Cincinnati Bengals. Green Bay took Valentine in the 7th round of the 2023 NFL Draft, so John Eric Sullivan knows him well, and obviously Hafley was there in 2024 and 2025, so he knows him very well also. As a rookie, he started 12 games for the Packers. In 2024, he started 7 games. That's when Hafley was there, and last season he started 11 games when Hafley was there. He's in the final year of his rookie contract, and I think it might be one of those deals where the Packers are looking at him like, are we going to sign this guy to a big money deal at the end of the year, or are we going to move on from him? Do we have other guys who are going to play before him this year? And if the answers to those questions are yes, then I think you could see the Packers look to move him. Now, here's the deal. Any team that trades for him is going to want to get him with a long-term contract. Why? Because you're not going to give up a pick for a 1-year rental, especially if you're the Miami Dolphins, where this is a rebuilding year anyways. So for Miami, first off, we know how much John Eric Sullivan loves the draft and how much he values draft picks. So that's number one. But he does know this player as well, very well. So maybe if it's someone he really likes, he would part with a pick. But you have to factor in the salary cap as well and how much it would cost to sign him to a long-term deal. Clearly, if a Valentine came to Miami, he would start at one of the cornerback positions. I mean, he'd probably be the best one on the team at that position, let's be honest, because Miami is so thin at corner right now. But I think if you're Miami, you got to proceed with caution. Well, yes, if this was a regular season with a team that was just sort of thin in the secondary trying to compete for a playoff spot, you would part with a future pick and you would add the cornerback and you would, probably pay him. If you're the Dolphins, though, you already have $180 million of dead money on the cap this year. You're probably not going to compete for a wild card spot. Is the draft pick more valuable? Because you're going to part with a pick and then pay this guy however much you're going to pay him. It's going to be more than a rookie deal. Let's just say that. Or is it just hold on to the pick? We'll take a corner with that pick and we'll have him under control for 4 years at a reasonable, if not cheap, contract. So I think Pittsburgh and Cincy, those are 2 teams that are in like win now mode almost. So they might be more eager to part with a higher pick. If you're Miami, as much as they know all those guys from the Packers and they know them well, just because where they are in this rebuild might not be the right fit for Miami to make that type of trade right now. So something to keep an eye on. We'll see what goes on here because there's going to be a ton, and I do mean a ton of roster moves between now and I believe it's August 30th there. That's like final cut down day or so. So we'll keep an eye out for this one. The Dolphins did work out 6 players as well this week. They didn't sign any of them to a contract yet, but we'll see what goes on this weekend in the preseason game versus Giants. If the second stringers and third stringers perform like they did versus Washington, would not be shocked if we see the Miami Dolphins sort of churn the bottom of the roster here. Here are the 6 names the Miami Dolphins worked out. Quarterback, Kyron Drones. Quarterback, Chandler Rogers. Wide receiver, A.T. Perry. Wide receiver, Brendan Rice, son of Jerry Rice. Linebacker, Steven Dix. Linebacker, Antonio Greer. No relation to Chris. Drones was a quarterback at Virginia Tech, was a little up and down. He's also a cousin of Cam Ward, not that that matters any, But with Quinn Ewers with a groin injury, you think it's only a week, might be more, who knows. Cam Miller hasn't been great. Mark Gronowski, they already cut once, they brought him back. I could see the Dolphins looking, especially if the Quinn Ewers injury is going to go a little longer, to bring in a quarterback here to sort of, try and see if you can improve that room slightly. Chandler Rogers as well. He was the MVP of the UFL, I believe. So he's played more recently. He's been in that type of situation. There's that. Brendan Rice, son of Jerry Rice, like I said, he played at Colorado before he went to USC. The Chargers took him in 2024 draft in the 7th round. Played only 3 games as a rookie for the Chargers. He didn't even have a reception. Since then, he's just sort of hopped around the league. Patriots, Seahawks, Raiders, Packers. The Packers claimed him off waivers back in May. That was after John Eric Sullivan left. So I don't know if some of those wide receivers don't improve. I could see the Dolphins looking to add one here. Another wide receiver, A.T. Perry, big body guy. He's a big guy, 6'5", almost size of a tight end, really. But he was a 6th-round pick of the Saints in 2023. Great in college, and the NFL really hasn't done much, though. So we'll see there. Linebacker Steven Dix. He played at Florida State before he transferred to Marshall. He's more of a traditional linebacker and probably more of a special teams guy. Unless they have some guys hurt at linebacker, I don't see him. Same with Antonio Greer, the linebacker. He played at South Florida before he transferred to Arkansas. So the Dolphins are bringing in, that's a lot of guys in 1 week. Most teams at this stage in the game, late August, aren't bringing in 6 guys to work out. The fact that Miami brought in 6 guys, the quarterbacks are understandable because they probably didn't want Mark Gronowski back, but they had to sign someone short notice. So they're like, let's sign him and let's work out some other guys, see if we can get a little bit of an upgrade there. Quinn Ewers' injury also forced this as well. So I understand the quarterbacks. Wide receivers, Chris Bell's back, not yet participating in a lot of drills, but he's back. You got Caleb Douglas, has been great as a rookie. Malik Washington, kind of after that, it hasn't been good. Tutu Atwell's been kind of bad this training camp. Jalen Tolbert has not been special. Taj Washington has not been special. So I can understand the quarterbacks and the wide receivers. While you're bringing in those guys, you might be looking to improve those rooms a little bit and maybe push some of the guys that are there, or maybe they come in here and in a week they shine and they actually take a roster spot. I don't know. The linebackers, unless there's guys hurt, I don't see where they're a fit, but they might know something we don't know when it comes to injuries. All right, the Miami Dolphins had a joint practice today with the New York Giants. And I don't know if it was a football practice or if it was like a UFC fight night, because there was like 3 or 4 fights in this practice today, this joint practice. And it's kind of funny. Jeff Hafley has been saying for weeks, the reason he only wants to do one joint practice with an opponent is because if you do 2 on the second day, the team that loses, or the team that felt like it lost the first practice, just shows up to fight. And nothing gets done. It's just a bunch of guys fighting and stuff like that. Well, it was only one practice versus the Giants today, and it was like 4 fights. And Hafley told his players prior to practice, don't throw a punch. I don't want to see any of you guys throw a punch. So early on in the practice, Patrick Paul was he was punched. Let me get the guy's name. Hold on real quick here. Was it Thibodeau or Abdul Carter punched Patrick Paul? Patrick Paul turned the other cheek and walked away. Not many players would do that. Patrick Paul did. But later on, in another fight in practice, Austin Jackson, he threw a haymaker, and he punched one of the Giants. And it started a melee, and Hafley took Austin Jackson off the field, but Jackson did return to practice after a period of time. So it's not like he just took him off the field, sent him to the locker room, you're done for the day because I told you not to punch. He sent him to the he just took him off the field for a bit and then ended up putting him back on the field. So I think the big takeaway from this practice is there were so many fights. That's kind of first and foremost. The other part, and I hate to say this because we kind of went through this last year when the Dolphins practiced with the Lions, where everyone in attendance said that the Lions just beat the crap out of the Dolphins. It was a lopsided practice. I don't know if this one was that bad, but from everyone who was there said that the Giants just abused the Dolphins, especially the offensive line. The Giants pass rush absolutely abused the Miami Dolphins offensive line. And the Dolphins had all 5 starters out there, so it's no excuse they didn't have their starters. Patrick Paul got beat, Austin Jackson got beat, the inside guys got beat. Someone said jokingly, but really not jokingly, that Giants pass rusher Brian Burns might have had 6 sacks on the day, and that's not a joke. He might have actually had 6, because with sacks, you can't touch the quarterback, so what's a sack, what's not? It might have been 6. It might have been 6. Just him, not counting anyone else. So it was bad. The other bad part was Miami secondary, I guess, got abused as well. And Giants tight end Isaiah Likely, people were saying he looked like a young Ozzie Newsome out there, just making plays left and right. So the offensive line's kind of disappointing, because everyone thought, it's not the best offensive line in the league, but it's improved over what we've seen in recent years. And then they go out, it's just a practice. I know it's August 20th. Let's see what they do Saturday. Wasn't good. And then the secondary, we know the secondary is a problem. It was a problem last Friday versus Washington. So we know that. Some guys for the Miami Dolphins who weren't on the practice field: Jordan Brooks, Kenneth Grant, Zach Sealer, Quinn Ewers, obviously, Ben Sims, Cleveland Farrell, and Robert Beal. They did not practice. Obviously, Quinn Ewers won't play. Jordan Brooks won't play. Zach Sealer won't play Saturday. We'll find out about Sims, Grant, Beal. Cleveland Farrell won't play either. He's out for like a month already, which is crazy. Practice, former Miami Dolphins safety Javon Holland sacked Malik Willis on a blitz play. Ollie Gordon had a nice 15-yard run on the outside. Cam Miller hit Jalen Wright for a very short pass. Trey Moore got a sack on Giants quarterback Jameis Winston. Jackson Dart hit Calvin Austin for a 20-yard touchdown pass. He beat St. Anderson pretty bad, I guess. Jacob Rodriguez for the Dolphins sacked Jackson Dart. Cam Miller hit about a 15-yard pass to Terrence Marshall for Miami. The Achane had a touchdown run, but it was called back for holding on Caden Proctor. And in the red zone period of practice, Miami did not score 1 touchdown. Mind you, they put the ball to 20, and they run a bunch of plays. Miami could not get a touchdown in the red zone period of offense. Chauncey Golston had a day for the Giants. He sacked Cam Miller once. He sacked Malik Willis twice. As I said, Brian Burns, who pretty much beat every Dolphins offensive lineman at some point, beat on this one play Caden Wallace for a sack. Abdul Carter, obviously the fight start with Patrick Paul there. Miami Dolphins running back Donovan Edwards hit a nice 9-yard run. Kayvon Thibodeau of the Giants swatted away a pass from Malik Willis. Riley Patterson had a 45-yard field goal. Jason Marshall Jr. got beat badly on a 50-yard pass from Jackson Dart to rookie Malachi Fields. Remember, Malachi Fields was the guy Miami wanted at the top of round 3. Giants traded up 1 spot in front of him, took Fields. That's when Miami, with the next pick, took Caleb Douglas. Now, he's been very good in camp so far, Douglas, so I'm sure each team is happy, but just kind of funny to see his name again, Malachi Fields. Like I said, there was about 4 fights in this practice today. It was crazy. I'm not sure how much was actually really accomplished. From everyone who was there, they said the Giants kind of were the more physical team. They were the more well-polished team. Is it a shock? No Dolphins fan should be shocked because, again, $180 million of dead money on the cap. You're not going to be able to field a competent team. You got a lot of rookies. And it's going to be tough to field a competent team with that many young players. And a team like the Giants is more veteran. They got more veteran guys out there. So, yeah, they probably did have their way a little bit. I would say the offensive line news, though, is very disappointing. Probably the most disappointing. You think, Patrick Paul's a second-round pick. Caden Proctor is a first-round pick. Austin Jackson's a first-round pick. Jonas Vainez, a second-round pick. And Aaron Brewer just got paid like a top 3 center. You would expect those guys to come out and have a better day. And I know that Giants have an outstanding pass rush. I get it. You still hope those guys come out. I mean, I'm not saying they got to be perfect. You'd hope they'd have a stronger day. So now and I think because this type of practice where the team overall didn't look good, outside the key veterans that are older, like Brooks and Zach Sealer, and some of those guys, probably everyone's going to play Saturday. And I would expect we see some of these starters go for more than one series. they got to get the taste out of their mouth of what happened today. There will be no practice Friday, and now there's no more practices open up to the fans. Every practice here on out's closed. I think the media, for most of them, they're allowed to be there for the first 10 minutes or so. Then they have to leave too. So this was the last open practice, I think, for most, and it wasn't a great one for the Dolphins. But again, you look at that second half versus Washington last week. Not even second half, pretty much after the first quarter. Once they took out the first stringers, the youth of the Dolphins showed, the youth and lack of talent, that this team has no depth. And it's not their fault. Those guys are out there working hard. It's not the fault of Halfley. It's not the fault of John Eric Sullivan. He walked in and he inherited this mess. And he has to clean up the cap before they can take a big leap forward, hopefully next year. You just got guys on this roster, especially the back end of this roster, who just aren't very good, who should not be on an NFL roster. Really, I mean, let me go through. I mean, I don't hate calling guys out by name, but you got guys like Nick McLeod, Amari Harvey, Major Burns, Miles Battle. They shouldn't be on an NFL roster, let alone even a training camp maybe. Rodney McGraw, Keith Cooper Jr. So many people are probably listening to this. Like, who are these people? These are the guys who are playing. Those are your second and third stringers. And, Cam Rice they signed this week. Seth Coleman-Lyles they signed this week. You're probably like, I've never heard of these names. That's the problem. Yes, at wide receivers, they have a bunch of names that you've heard of before. I'm not sure any of them are really that good outside of maybe the rookies and Malik Washington. Offensive line, first string, like I said, a lot of first, second round picks. The second string, Charlie Heck, Josh Freeby, Caden Wallace, Andrew Meyer, Campbell, the rookie. I mean, it's just not a lot of talent there. Tight end, you got one pretty good tight end who's coming back after a strong year. Will Kazmarek looks like the real deal. But after that, you got Cole Turner, Jeremiah Franklin. When you really look at this Miami Dolphins roster, outside of running back, it's just and linebacker, I guess I'd say now, there's just not a lot of depth. It's just that's the situation you're in, and that's not going to change between now and week one, and that's not going to change for this upcoming season. And that's why most outlets have them as the worst roster in the NFL, and their power rankings ranked 32nd overall. It's like I can't get mad at it because that's what this roster is. It's one or two key injuries, and they're going to be in a lot of trouble. That's why for Austin Jackson, when he was having his toe issue at the start of camp, and then Charlie Heck was out there having a hard time at right tackle, they rushed to trade. To trade for Caden Wallace, who the Patriots are going to cut, but they didn't want to risk not landing him on the waiver wire. So this roster is a work in progress. This year is going to be what this year is. Hopefully these young players, the Chris Johnsons, Michael Taft, Trey Moore, Kyle Lewis, Jacob Rodriguez, Will Kazmarek, Caden Proctor, Chris Bell, Caleb, Kevin Coleman and Caleb Douglas, over the course of the year, improve. And maybe they don't win games, but at the end of the year, 5 or 6 of those names I just mentioned, like, hey, that's our foundation moving forward. You put those guys with Achane and Brooks and Aaron Brewer, that's our foundation moving forward that we are going to build around. We got 1 or 2 wide receivers that are okay. Yeah, we might need a true number 1, but at least we got the rest of the room kind of figured out. We got a pair of linebackers and Jacob Rodriguez and Jordan Brooks that are like the heart and soul of our defense. Okay, we got to get more edge rushers. Hopefully Chop has a good year. We got to get someone opposite Chop. Like, that's what you're hoping for, because I think wins are going to be tough, especially when you're facing the AFC West and those talented teams, the NFC North and those talented teams. Crossover games with San Francisco. You got a crossover. You got a game versus Cincinnati. You have a game versus the Colts. Those are tough games right there. And then you get 2 games versus the Bills, 2 games versus the Patriots. It's going to be tough. But hopefully these young players are they really can turn into something here over the course of the year. That's what I'm going to be watching for most weeks, because hoping for wins, it might be a little tough. And I will say this too today. I know Halfley didn't want them to fight. He wanted them to sort of turn the other cheek, so to speak. I get it, what he's coming from. He wants to have a productive practice. He's the coach. He's supposed to say that. I kind of like it that the Dolphins fought back a little bit. I like hearing Austin Jackson actually threw a punch. I don't think much of Austin Jackson as a player, but it warmed my heart to hear he threw a punch at somebody. And he stood up for a teammate. I like hearing that. And I have no problem with Patrick Paul not throwing one. He was just, he's a second-year player. He's a young player. He's just following orders. Or actually, he's a third-year player, I think, right? Whatever he is. He probably just didn't want to upset his coach, but I like that they were in some scuffles and they didn't back down. Maybe they didn't even win the fight, but the fact that they didn't back down and they were in it, that tells me something. And I like hearing that. I do. I like hearing that. So, it's kind of a rough day for the Dolphins at practice today. We'll see how they look Saturday versus the Giants in the preseason game. Hopefully, as last week's game with the starters out there, they played very well. If we can get that again this week from the starters, that'd be great. And then once they're out of the game, we'll hope a few of these guys who are second string improve off their performance of last week and play a little better. We'll see. I actually hope the Giants actually play some starters. I know last week with Washington, because they didn't play any starters, it was almost like Miami, there was an asterisk, like, yeah, they played well, but. Well, I don't want to hear they played well, but. Hopefully the Giants play their starters at least for a series or two. So then if Miami plays well, you can say they played well versus their starters. Hopefully. We'll see. I don't know. But, that's all for today's show. As always, Sleeper Miami Dolphins YouTube channel. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. Also, put up a comment down below if there's a topic or two you want me to talk about on an upcoming show. And on X, Twitter, at Sleeper Miami. Everyone, have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you again after a while, and take care.